What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's a big day for me here. I've been steady working on the Packard, and I think all the heavy suspension fabrication work is done today, this morning. So what I have is the car up in the air right now. I have one of the front wheels off. I'm going to go over everything I've done here and talk a little bit about it, and then I want to roll it outside so I can actually lay it down on the ground and see what it looks like instead of being in the shop with the lift in the way and all that kind of stuff. So the biggest issue that I had was everything. This is the first car that I've ever bagged, and I ran into some issues. I thought this was going to be a week or two and I'd have all the stuff mocked up and ready to go. That was 3 months ago. So, well, 2 months ago. Let's say 2 months. So let's start in the front end and we'll go over everything that I've done. And then I really do want to get this thing on the ground and outside. All right, so I'm carrying a light here with me, so hopefully we can see everything a little bit better. The control arms in the front. Let's start there. So I plated those in the center. You can see the triangle piece with 1/4-inch plate, and that is what my bag attaches to. Now I had to do some trimming inside the frame and on the control arm itself for the bag to fit. That's a 7-inch bag in the front of this. What I just finished up this morning is the front shock mounts. So the shock mounts on this car gave me a lot of trouble. One, because I don't have any room to put them, and two, getting all the angles right and the amount of travel that I wanted out of them. So these are a 14-inch shock with 7 inches of travel in the front of this thing. And all I did was weld a bolt to the front of the control arm here, and then I used the Thorbeck Brothers upper mount to mount the top of the shock. The bag, being a 7-inch bag, should be able to carry the weight of the front of this car just fine. I've had it on the ground once already, and they perform quite well. So when I tear this apart, the upper and lower control arms are getting new bushings, new kingpins in the front. The brakes have already been rebuilt, and then everything will go out and be sandblasted and powder coated. And you can see with the wheel on this side, we get pretty close up here when turning the upper mount to the tire, so I actually trimmed those a little bit, and hopefully we have enough room that we have some sort of turning radius on this thing. Inside the frame, which you can't see, but I'll do another video when I have it all blown apart, is the upper bag mount. And what that is a piece of 5-inch tube, like that, cut with the upper bag mount plate, and then a stud that runs through and catches where the shock used to mount in this car. The shock used to be inside of the spring. So, simpler setup in the front. I have to figure out my lower bump stop. The upper bump stop is factory. You can see it right there. So those should be in here in a couple days. And yeah, that's about it for the front. Everything's mocked up. Moving towards the rear, the drive shaft is out right now being lengthened because I have the GM 8.5-inch rear end out of a truck back here. So in the rear, we used our factory spring mount in the front for our lower control arm. Upper control arm is all custom done. And I learned a lot when I was doing this too about angles and how everything's supposed to work. So we still have all of our mock-up bushings, the aluminum bushings in the lower control arms. The upper control arms, I used R joints, front and rear. And the reason for that is, as the rear end tucks up into the car, the pinion angle changes, and the rear end actually comes closer to the transmission. So it was quite a lot of doing to get all this stuff to work right. What would happen is the upper control arm bushings would bind, and it wouldn't allow the rear end to move up and down like it was supposed to. The bag mounts are behind and below axle on this, and there's a cross member welded in to the frame that supports our upper bag mount and our upper shock mount. Now the shocks in the back here, as you can see, are at an angle, and the reason for that is I needed a short shock, and what this is a 10-inch shock with 5 inches of travel. So we have it actually lower than our bag, and then it mounts to our cross member that goes in between the frame rails up top. So I do have to do a few things down here, like these holes I'm going to weld up, clean up everything once I get the rear end out of the car. Well, that's really about it for the rear. It took me a long time to get this all straightened out and figured out how I'm going to do it. So I probably have a month in all the rear suspension geometry, making my control arms, getting the R joints in. And the shock mounts took about a week because I tried it 18 different ways before I finally figured out this is how I'm going to do it. So what I'm going to do, the straps are holding the rear end from falling right now. The shocks will hold it, but just like a little extra support under here. So I'm going to get these straps out of here. get some air lines figured up real quick, and we'll get this thing on the ground and get it ready to roll out. Okay, we are on the ground. Now, I have the air lines separated right now, front and rear, just to get it outside. I'm gonna have to grab the golf cart to pull it out of here, and then I'll have to figure out how to get it back in here. But, yeah, I'm excited. Get this thing outside, see what it looks like. Okay, well, lawnmower to the rescue because the golf cart is dead. So here we are, looking at ride height. Ride height looks about normal, right? A little low, but I had some lowering blocks in the rear of it when I was driving it around before. So I need to hook up some air lines, get an air hose out here, and then we're gonna run this thing through the travel a little bit. Okay, so I let the air out real quick, and I haven't hooked up the air lines together yet so I can raise it and lower it. But as I was letting the air out of the back, I heard a noise. The spare tire well lays on the ground, so that was going to come out anyway because that's where I want to mount my compressors, on the bottom side. So I was going to cut that out and mount them there, but it's interesting that it's that low. So let me get some air lines run, and we'll run this thing through the motions real quick. It's low. The frame, from my measurements, should be 3/4 of an inch off the ground, and it probably is. Looks badass though. Super happy with it. All right, so I've got all the air lines hooked up. I'm gonna go outside and raise it and lower it. The airbags in the front are a different size than the ones in the rear. Front is 7-inch, rear is 6-inch, so they react differently to pressure, and also the weight is a big difference too. So the car isn't lifting at the same rate and lowering at the same rate. The rear is actually a lot slower, but this is all run through one airline right now too. So once the solenoids are in and all that stuff, the car is going to react a lot differently. But this will give me an idea of what it's going to look like. So on the ground, super happy. Let's lift it up. So, all right, there you have it. It's one big step done now, I guess. So I'll give a quick little walk around before I turn the camera off. The bump stops in the front are actually limiting how low it'll go, and it looks like they need to be adjusted a little bit to get the front a little bit lower. The rear end is definitely sitting on the ground. So for those of you who have watched the other videos, you know I C-notched the frame, and the rear end is sitting up in the trunk right now. So there's some sheet metal work to be done, but all in all, this thing looks really cool on the ground. I don't know how you couldn't lower one of these. Pretty awesome. So now that it's out of the shop, I'm going to take a chance and clean the shop, and I'll edit this video, get it out to you guys in a couple of days. Try to post up on this on Instagram more often, so if you guys want to check me out, this is where you find me on Instagram. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. I'll keep you up to date. We'll see you next time.